The galaxy was a vast ocean of stars, filled with countless worlds, but even among them all, few shone as brightly as the Velnar Empire. Their cities floated on crystal towers that pierced the clouds, and their people were born with skin that glowed faintly in the dark. They were beings of light and wisdom, proud and ancient, yet inside the grandest palace of them all, one young soul felt nothing but loneliness. Her name was Princess Lyraya, daughter of Emperor Kalor, ruler of 12 systems, heir to the throne of Starlight. She was only in her 3rd decade, still considered youthful by her kind. Her silver-blue hair shimmered like liquid moonlight, and her eyes glowed softly like the calm sea before dawn. Every artist in the empire painted her face. Every poet wrote verses about her grace. But for all her beauty and charm, Lyraya's heart was empty. Each morning she stood on the highest balcony of the palace where 2 suns rose side by side, filling the sky with gold and violet colors. From there she could see the endless silver cities, the airships floating silently, and the gardens that sparkled under mist. To others it was paradise, but to her it felt like a golden cage. For 5 long galactic cycles her father had searched for a suitor worthy of her. The Emperor wanted a powerful union, someone who could strengthen the Velnar Empire, someone from the noble bloodlines of other worlds. And so the royal summons was sent across the stars. Princes came in shining ships from worlds that glowed green, red, and blue. Some were tall and scaled, their eyes sharp like blades. Some had wings of light. Some had voices that could melt stone. Each of them came with gifts, jewels from dying suns, crowns carved from meteorite gold, and promises of peace and power. But one by one they left disappointed or angry. The truth was simple. None of them wanted Lyraya for who she was. They wanted the power of her throne, the prestige of her name, or the wealth of her empire. But the young princess had a heart too soft for politics. She believed love should not be forced or bought. She dreamed of someone who would see her not as a title but as a person. And so when each suitor came, she asked them one question. If I were not a princess, would you still want me? Their answers were always the same: silence, confusion, or laughter. News began to spread among the stars. The Velnar princess is impossible to please, they said. Too emotional. Too childish. Some called her foolish. Others said she had too much pride. But none of them understood, and she didn't want to be worshipped. She wanted to be seen. At night she sat alone in the Hall of Echoes, a grand room made of clear glass and soft light, where the stars could be seen through the transparent walls. She would look up at them and whisper softly to herself, "Maybe I am meant to be alone." Her voice echoed faintly through the empty chamber, like a song no one remembered. Her maidens loved her dearly, but even they could not understand the pain behind her calm smile. They often told her, "Princess, someday your heart will find its match." But Lyraya had begun to lose faith in such dreams. On the 5th year of her waiting, even her father began to lose patience. The Emperor was a man of logic and duty, and he could not understand his daughter's heart. "Lyraya," he said one evening, "our empire needs alliances, not fairy tales. You cannot wait forever for someone who does not exist." She looked at him quietly. "Maybe he exists, father," she said softly. "But maybe he is just not like the ones we expect." Her words made the Emperor frown. He could not argue with her, but he could not agree either. So the palace remained filled with silence. That night, as the 2 suns disappeared beyond the horizon, Lyraya stood again on her balcony. The twin moons rose in their place, glowing silver on her soft skin. The wind was cool and full of starlight dust. Somewhere deep in her heart, a small voice whispered, "There is someone out there, someone who will not see you as a prize." She didn't know where that hope came from, but it was enough to keep her standing there, eyes on the stars, wishing, not for a prince, not for a throne, but for a heart that would understand hers. She had no idea that far beyond her empire, on a small blue world called Earth, someone had already heard her call, and he was coming. The morning began like any other in the shining capital of the Velnar Empire. Twin suns climbed lazily over the horizon, painting the sky in golden light. Palace guards stood tall in silver armor. The gardens bloomed with flowers that shimmered faintly in the air, and the halls echoed with quiet music from unseen instruments. Princess Lyraya sat at the royal table, surrounded by nobles and advisors. Her plate was filled with fruits that floated in the air, sweet and glowing, but she barely touched them. Her eyes looked distant, lost in thought. She never spoke aloud. Around her, the voices of the court buzzed, full of gossip, pride, and politics. Her father, Emperor Kalor, sat on the high seat beside her, listening to his ministers. "Your Majesty," one said, "the latest suitor from the Krenath Dominion has withdrawn his proposal. He claimed the princess is impossible to satisfy." A shadow crossed the emperor's face. "Another one?" he murmured. The room fell silent. Lyria felt the weight of all eyes turned toward her. She looked down, ashamed, even though she had done nothing wrong. "Father," she said quietly, "they do not seek love. They seek your power. I cannot accept such hearts." The emperor sighed, rubbing his temples. "Lyria, power keeps empires alive. Love does not protect the throne." She did not answer. Deep inside, she wondered if maybe he was right, if perhaps her heart was a weakness. But before anyone could say more, a voice came from outside the hall. "A ship approaches, Your Majesty, unidentified." The emperor frowned. "From which world?" "Unknown, sire," replied the guard. "It carries no royal markings. Just a single life form aboard." That caught everyone's attention. Nobles exchanged nervous looks. Only outlaws or fools dared to arrive at the palace without permission. Within moments, alarms filled the air as the palace defense shields shimmered to life. The people gathered in the courtyard, their glowing faces filled with curiosity and fear. Then, with a loud hiss, a small gray ship descended slowly through the clouds. It was old, scarred, and dirty, nothing like the shining vessels of noble worlds. It landed gently on the marble ground, its metal hull steaming from the heat of re-entry. The guards aimed their weapons, ready for anything. The air was tense. The door of the ship opened with a metallic groan, and out stepped a single figure. Tall, rough, dressed in worn brown fabric and a dark jacket. His hair was dark, his skin tanned, his face marked by dust and fatigue. Yet his eyes held something different, something alive. He looked around the courtyard, taking in the gleaming towers, the glowing citizens, the endless beauty. For a moment he almost smiled. Then he took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the silence. "I am Captain Elias Ward of Earth." The name meant little to most. The courtiers whispered among themselves. "Earth, that primitive world?" One sneered. "How did he even reach us?" The emperor's expression hardened. "Earth? You stand before the throne of the Velnar Empire without invitation." Elias bowed awkwardly, not used to such formality. "I came because I heard your message. You called for those who wished to prove their worth to the princess." Laughter broke out among the nobles. "You, a human? You think you are fit for our princess?" Elias didn't react. His calmness made the laughter fade. "I may not have jewels or titles," he said quietly, "but I can offer honesty. That's rare in this galaxy, isn't it?" The emperor was not amused. "You are bold, human. Perhaps too bold." But Lyria, standing a few steps behind her father, felt something stir inside her. She looked closely at the stranger. The dust on his boots, the roughness of his hands, the small scar near his jaw. He was nothing like the princes who had come before. They had arrived with light and noise. He arrived with silence and truth. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and for the first time in many years her heart skipped a beat. The emperor finally said, "You wish to prove your worth? Then you will face the trial of worth, as all others have. Fail and you will be banished from our skies." Elias nodded. "Understood, Your Majesty." The nobles chuckled, whispering that he wouldn't last a single trial. But the princess said nothing. She only watched him as he stood under the sun, a small, fragile man from a forgotten world. And yet, somehow, he looked stronger than anyone she had ever met. Later, as Elias was escorted to his quarters, Lyria stood by the balcony, watching his ship glimmer faintly in the distance. She could still hear his voice in her mind, steady, humble, real. For the first time, she felt a strange pull in her chest, something that whispered, "This one is different," and somewhere deep in her heart, the quiet hope she had long buried began to wake again. She did not yet know why. She only knew that the stars had finally answered her wish. The morning sun cast long shadows across the grand arena of Velnar, a place built from crystal and starlight where the Empire's greatest suitors had come to prove themselves. The arena shimmered like a floating star, its walls engraved with the stories of heroes long gone. Today it would tell a new story, the story of a human who dared to challenge the impossible. Princess Lyria stood atop a balcony, her silver hair glowing in the sunlight. Her heart pounded with quiet anticipation. She had watched countless suitors attempt the trial of worth, and all had failed. Some were proud, relying on their power or ancient lineage. Some were clever, trying to trick the trials rather than understand them. All left the arena defeated, humbled, or broken. When the emperor announced the first trial, the maze of illusions, the crowd cheered and gasped, their voices echoing against the crystal walls. The maze was a living construct, bending reality, creating illusions that reflected fear, desire, and greed. Many had entered confidently and vanished in hours, lost in mirrors that tricked the mind. Elias the human stepped forward with no armor, no sword, only a small satchel on his back. The nobles snickered. "Watch, Your Highness," one whispered to Lyria. "He will be eaten by the illusions like the rest." The gates opened and Elias entered the maze. Inside, walls of shimmering light appeared. Shadows moved like whispers, voices called his name, showing visions of failure, sorrow, and the faces of loved ones lost. His heart trembled, but he did not run. He whispered quietly to himself, "None of this is real. I am here for truth, not fear." Hours passed. The spectators began to grow restless. Whispers of doubt floated through the air. But finally Elias emerged. His clothes were dusty, his eyes tired, but he was smiling faintly. He had faced fear, but he had not let it control him. The second trial was the Beast of Trials, a creature bred to test courage. It was massive, with claws that could pierce crystal walls and eyes that glowed with fury. Past suitors had attacked blindly, trying to strike it down with weapons, but all had been thrown aside. Elias approached the creature cautiously. The crowd gasped. While others would have attacked, he knelt before it and examined its paw. A thorn had pierced deep. Carefully he removed it, whispering soft words. The creature's fury faded and it bowed its massive head in gratitude. A hush fell over the arena. The nobles were shocked. "A human tamed the beast without a weapon?" one muttered. Finally, the last trial and the mirror of heart God awaited. A massive mirror, older than the empire itself, stood at the center. It reflected the deepest truths of the soul, showing desires, regrets, and weaknesses. Many suitors had seen visions of themselves as conquerors or kings, proud and confident. Few had faced the truth, their own faults, their selfishness, or their loneliness. Elias stepped before the mirror. It showed the faces of his fallen crew, the lives he could not save, the mistakes he carried across countless light years. Tears came to his eyes, but he did not turn away. He whispered softly, "I will carry your memory. I will not let it break me." The mirror glowed a warm gold, and for the first time the audience heard a sigh of admiration. The human had passed. The princess herself felt her heart swell. He had not just faced the trials, he had understood them. Emperor Kalor, usually composed and unshakable, frowned in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "No human has ever surpassed the trials of the Velnar Empire." Lyria's eyes sparkled. She felt something she had not felt in years, hope. She wanted to see him, to know him. This man from a small, forgotten world had dared to enter a galaxy that had shunned him. He had faced impossible trials and had emerged stronger in heart than any noble she had met. As Elias stepped down from the arena, tired but steady, he caught sight of her. Their eyes met across the crowd. In that instant, a silent understanding passed between them, a connection deeper than titles, wealth, or power. He had proven his worth not through conquest or deception, but through courage, empathy, and honesty. The nobles murmured. Some were in awe, some in disbelief, but the princess's heart knew the truth. She had waited for someone who would see her soul, and now she had found him. Elias bowed low to the emperor, then turned to the princess. His voice was soft but firm. "Princess Lyria, I am ready to serve, to stand beside you, not as a subject, but as someone who sees you truly." The princess felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had longed for but thought impossible. For the first time in her life, she smiled freely without fear or doubt. The galaxy had many wonders, many beings of power and skill. But this human, small, unremarkable to the eye, yet unshakable in heart, had reminded her of something the stars themselves had forgotten, that true strength lies in courage and compassion, not in titles or glory. And somewhere in that glittering arena, amidst the whispers and gasps, the first spark of hope for the princess's heart was lit, a spark that could never be extinguished. Days passed after the trials, and the palace hummed with whispers. The nobles, who had once laughed at Elias Ward the human, now spoke in cautious admiration. Some were still skeptical, but most could not deny that the man had accomplished what no one else could. The princess, however, did not care for whispers, politics, or admiration. Her heart was preoccupied with the one person who had seen her as she truly was. Lyria watched him quietly from her balcony the morning after the trial. Elias moved with calm certainty, repairing a minor fault in his ship's hull, his hands rough but careful. She noticed the way he approached the world, not with arrogance, not with greed, but with an attention that made even small things seem important. Her heart, which had been heavy with loneliness for so long, felt something it had not known in years: warmth. Curiosity drove her to speak with him that evening in the palace gardens, a place of floating flowers and luminous streams. "You could have gone anywhere after the trials," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the whisper of the wind. "Why stay here?" Elias looked up from adjusting a small, glowing device he carried. His eyes, steady and earnest, met hers. "Because this place needs someone who sees the truth, not just the grandeur," he said quietly. "And because I wanted to meet you properly." Lyria smiled faintly, unsure why her heart fluttered at his words. Few had ever spoken to her with such honesty. Most had only seen a princess, a prize, a symbol of the empire. Elias had looked past the silver hair, past the glow in her skin, and had met her soul. From that day on, they spent long hours together. Elias would tell her stories of Earth, a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, filled with oceans that roared and sunsets that burned red. He spoke of cities alive with music, of forests where light fell in patterns like the stars, of simple acts of kindness that had changed people's lives. Lyria listened, fascinated, sometimes laughing so freely that her maidens had to hide their smiles. She told him about her life, about the loneliness behind the laughter, about the pressure of being perfect in a world that demanded perfection. Elias never judged. He only listened, his dark eyes reflecting understanding, his hand sometimes brushing hers when she spoke of something tender or painful. One evening, as twin moons rose over the crystal towers, she asked softly, "Do humans always feel so much?" Elias tilted his head and smiled. "Maybe that's our only gift," he said. "To feel deeply even when it hurts. To care even when it is inconvenient. To love even when we are afraid." Lyria felt a lump in her throat. She had waited so long for someone who could understand her, someone who could see her heart instead of her crown. And now she had found him, a human from a distant, forgotten world whose courage and compassion were greater than any noble she had known. The court noticed the change in her demeanor. The princess, who had been distant and solemn, now laughed quietly in the halls, sometimes absent-mindedly tracing patterns in the light. But it was not just laughter. It was light in her eyes, a spark that no jewel or crown could create. For Elias, the palace was strange and overwhelming, but he did not complain. He learned quickly, not because he wished to impress, but because he wished to understand the people, the customs, and most importantly, the princess. He asked questions, made mistakes, and laughed at himself. Lyria found it endearing. One day, as they walked in the palace gardens under the twin suns, Elias reached for her hand. It was the first time he had done so without asking. She did not pull away. Instead, she let their fingers intertwine, and for the first time in years she felt safe and seen, not as a princess, but as Lyria herself. The connection between them grew quietly, like a river forming in the desert. It was not rushed nor forced. It was gentle, steady, and undeniable. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that love was not a dream, that someone could truly care for her heart, not just her crown. And Elias, who had crossed the galaxy from a world so small and fragile, discovered that love was not about status or power either. It was about courage, honesty, and the willingness to see another soul, and to let them see yours. That night, Lyria stood on her balcony, looking out at the endless stars. She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet, steady flame of hope. She knew that the galaxy was vast and filled with wonders, but for the first time, she felt that her heart had found its own universe in a human from a distant, forgotten world. Somewhere in the palace halls, Elias slept peacefully, unaware that he had changed not just the princess, but the course of her life, and perhaps one day, the history of the galaxy itself. Not all within the palace welcomed the change. While Princess Lyria's heart had begun to bloom, whispers of disapproval rippled through the halls like a cold wind. The nobles who had once scorned Elias now studied him with suspicion. Some muttered behind closed doors, calling him a low-born human and unworthy of royal blood. Others feared what his presence might mean for the empire, a foreigner, an outsider, potentially destabilizing the centuries of tradition. Even the Emperor Kalor, felt the weight of his ancestors' expectations pressing upon him. He had witnessed the trials. He had seen Elias succeed where the greatest nobles had failed. Yet he could not reconcile a human, a creature from a tiny, insignificant planet, with the grandeur of the Velnar throne. One evening, the Emperor summoned Elias to the Grand Council Hall. The room gleamed with crystal walls etched with the stories of past rulers, their deeds immortalized in light. Guards stood at attention and the courtiers held their breaths, eager to see how this audacious human would respond to imperial scrutiny. "Captain Elias Ward," the Emperor began, his voice steady but cold, "you have passed the trials. You have shown courage, wisdom, and compassion. And yet you are human. Your world is small. Your people are insignificant. You are unworthy of joining the royal bloodline." Elias bowed his head respectfully, though his heart raced. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I do not seek a crown or a title. I came because your daughter deserves someone who sees her heart, not her throne. If that is not acceptable to you, I will leave." The room grew tense. Lyria, who had been observing silently from the doorway, felt her chest tighten. Her hands clenched at her sides. "Father," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "you asked for a suitor who is worthy. He has proven himself. Not with weapons, not with gold, not with schemes, but with his heart. What more do you ask?" The Emperor looked away, his expression unreadable. "A human cannot carry the burden of our empire. The nobles would never accept it. The people would question our strength. You would risk everything for, what, a fleeting feeling?" Lyria's silver eyes burned with emotion. "It is not fleeting. Do you not see? This man respects me. He understands me. He does not seek to control me nor to use me. He sees me, and that is worth more than all the power in the galaxy." The Emperor's lips pressed into a thin line. He could see the truth in his daughter's eyes. Yet the weight of centuries of expectation chained him. He sighed, turning back to Elias. "You may stay for now," he said, his voice tight. "But know this, the court will watch you. One misstep and you will be gone." Elias inclined his head. "I understand, Your Majesty." Lyria exhaled slowly, relief and anger mingling. She wanted to speak, to argue, to tell her father that love was worth any risk, but she knew he would not listen yet. All she could do was stand by him and hope that in time he would understand the strength of a human heart. Yet disapproval did not fade so easily. Rumors spread through the empire like wildfire. "The princess is soft," some said. "She will be manipulated." Others whispered, "The human will destroy the Velnar Empire from within." Guards were ordered to watch Elias closely. Servants glanced nervously at him, unsure if they should serve him as an equal. Despite it all, Lyria found moments of quiet joy. She would meet Elias in secret in the palace gardens under the glowing moonlight, where flowers floated and streams shimmered like liquid silver. She would sit beside him listening to stories of Earth, of mountains taller than towers, rivers wider than seas, cities alive with laughter and song. Elias told her about human resilience, how they continued even when hope seemed lost, how they cared even when it was inconvenient. Lyria listened, heart swelling. In his stories, she saw the truth of his character. He had faced countless dangers, endured hardship, and yet he still carried kindness, patience, and courage. In a galaxy that had turned away from her, he had arrived, not for glory, not for power, but for her. That night, as they walked beneath the twin moons, she slipped her hand into his. Elias looked down, startled for a moment, then smiled gently. "Princess," he said softly, "you don't have to fight alone anymore." Lyria felt tears prick her eyes. "I never thought anyone would truly see me," she whispered. "And now, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in my life." The storm of disapproval raged outside their private world. But for a brief, shining moment, it did not matter. Two hearts separated by stars and species had found each other, and nothing in the galaxy, not whispers, not noble pride, not centuries of tradition, could diminish the strength of that connection. For the first time, Lyraya understood that love was not just a feeling, it was courage. Courage to defy expectation, to face judgment, and to stand by the one who had touched her heart. And in Elias she saw that courage reflected back, steady and unshakable, like a lighthouse in the darkness of the world. The galaxy may have disapproved. The court may have resisted. But in that moment, Lyraya knew one truth more powerful than any law or custom. Her heart had chosen. The morning light spilled over the palace towers, turning the crystal walls into a sea of gold. But inside the air was heavy with tension. Today, Princess Lyraya faced a choice that could change the course of her life, and the life of the Empire itself. The court was already gathered in the grand hall. Nobles whispered among themselves, their eyes flicking toward Elias Ward. Some were openly scornful, calling him a lowly human and unworthy of our princess. The Emperor stood tall, his face a mask of authority, but his eyes betrayed the conflict inside. He had seen the human succeed in trials that no Velnar could conquer, yet he struggled to accept him as more than a curiosity. Lyraya's heart pounded as she approached the front of the hall. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, her glowing eyes scanning the room. She could feel the weight of centuries of expectation pressing on her shoulders, yet there was a fire in her chest that refused to be extinguished. Her father's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Princess Lyraya, the suitor has proven himself in the trials. Yet he is human. His place is not among the nobles of the Velnar Empire. You must choose wisely. Accept him and you risk scandal, disapproval, and unrest. Refuse him and you uphold tradition, but perhaps at the cost of your own happiness." Elias stood at her side, quiet but steady. His hands were clasped in front of him, his dark eyes full of resolve. He did not speak. He only waited, allowing Lyraya the freedom to make her choice. For a long moment the room was silent, save for the soft hum of the palace. Lyraya felt every eye on her, every whisper pressing against her skin. Her mind raced, recalling the long years of loneliness, the endless parade of suitors who had come for her throne, not her heart. She remembered the faces of those who had tried to win her affection with pride and wealth, and the emptiness that followed. And then she looked at Elias. She saw a man who had crossed galaxies, who had faced impossible trials, who had chosen to come for her, not for glory, not for wealth, not for power, but because he understood her. He had laughed with her, listened to her, comforted her, and shown her a world she had never imagined. Tears pricked her eyes, but she held them back. She lifted her chin, letting her voice ring clear across the hall. "Father, I will not choose tradition over truth. I will not let fear of scandal dictate my heart. This man has proven himself not through titles or lineage, but through courage, honesty, and compassion. He sees me, not as a princess, but as Lyraya. And that is all I ask." Gasps echoed through the room. The nobles murmured in shock. A few whispered angrily, their faces red with disbelief. Even the Emperor's expression faltered, his jaw tightening. "Princess," he began, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "This is my choice," she said firmly. "I choose him." A ripple of tension passed through the hall. Some guards looked uncertain, unsure if they should act, while others glanced nervously at the Emperor. Lyraya stepped closer to Elias, taking his hand in hers. His eyes widened slightly, and then a soft, stunned smile crossed his face. "You truly mean this?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Yes," she said simply. "I have waited so long to be seen, and now I am." The Emperor exhaled slowly, a mix of anger, worry, and reluctant respect in his gaze. "Then you must understand, my daughter," he said, his voice low, "that this decision will bring challenges unlike any you have faced. Many will oppose it. Some may even try to harm you for it." Lyraya met his gaze steadily. "I understand. But I will not live my life for their approval. I will live it for my heart." The courtiers were silent, the air thick with tension. Then slowly Elias bowed his head respectfully to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, I will honor your daughter in this empire. I will do everything in my power to protect her and serve with integrity. I ask only for her trust and permission to stand by her side." The Emperor studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. "So be it," he said. "You may remain for now, but know that the eyes of the Empire will always watch you." Relief washed over Lyria, and for the first time in years, she laughed freely, not the polite laugh of a princess, but the pure, unrestrained sound of someone who had finally chosen truth over fear. She looked at Elias, feeling the warmth of hope, courage, and love intertwining in her chest. Hand in hand, they stepped forward together. The court watched, some with grudging respect, some with disbelief. Lyria's choice had been made. She had chosen love over tradition, courage over fear, and in doing so, she had taken the first step toward a future she had never dared to imagine. That night, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Lyria and Elias walked through the gardens, their fingers entwined. The flowers glowed softly in the moonlight, reflecting the quiet radiance of two hearts united against a galaxy that had doubted them. For the first time, the princess felt truly free, not just a ruler, but a woman who had followed her heart, and Elias, the human from a distant world, understood that the greatest journey was not across galaxies, but into the heart of someone who had waited a lifetime to be seen. The days after Princess Lyria made her choice were filled with whispers, tension, and wonder. The palace corridors hummed with curiosity and speculation. Some nobles continued to mutter their disapproval, calling Elias a mere human unworthy of the empire. Others, however, watched quietly, intrigued by the courage and honesty of the man who had dared to win the heart of the Velnar princess. Lyria, however, no longer cared for whispers or judgment. For the first time, she felt a peace she had not known since childhood. Walking beside Elias in the palace gardens, she could feel his steady presence, his hand warm around hers. Together, they shared moments of laughter, quiet conversation, and small adventures through the glittering towers of the empire. Elias learned the ways of the Velnar, not to impress, but to understand. He made mistakes, stumbled over etiquette, and sometimes offended with his blunt human ways. Yet Lyria only smiled. She found joy in his honesty, his simple but profound understanding of life and emotion. With him, the empire's grandeur no longer felt suffocating. With him, she could breathe. Despite the growing bond, the empire's elders and courtiers tested them constantly. The whispers of scandal and doubt did not fade overnight. Some challenged Elias to debates, demanding he prove his wisdom. Others sought to discredit him, claiming he could never protect a princess of the Velnar. Yet every time Elias faced these trials with patience, courage, and humility, he did not seek to dominate or command respect. He earned it quietly, one act of honesty at a time. Through it all, Lyria watched him, her admiration growing alongside her love. She had been lonely for so long, shunned by nobles who valued status over heart. Yet this human, a stranger from a distant, overlooked world, had shown her the strength of compassion, the courage of sincerity, and the power of love. And soon, stories of their bond spread across the stars. Ships from distant systems whispered of the princess who had chosen a human, a being who had no titles, no immense power, yet had conquered the trials of the greatest empire. Humans, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, became objects of curiosity and respect. Many worlds began to reconsider their view of Earth's people. The galaxy started to notice what the Velnar had always overlooked: humanity's courage, resilience, and heart. Even the Emperor, who had initially opposed their union, began to see the truth. He watched Elias protect, serve, and love his daughter without ambition, without greed, without pride. Slowly, his anger softened into reluctant respect. Perhaps he thought the galaxy could learn from these humans, a species small in size yet vast in courage and character. Time passed, and Lyria and Elias continued to grow together. They often retreated from the palace to the quiet moons of their empire, seeking solitude and freedom. There, beneath silver skies and twin moons, they dreamed, laughed, and planned. Together, they imagined a future not dictated by tradition, but by the bond they had forged. One night, as they watched the stars shimmer above the crystal towers, Lyria whispered, "Do you ever think about how small your world is compared to this galaxy?" Elias smiled, his hand brushing hers. "It doesn't matter," he said softly, "because no matter how small or distant we are, love, courage, and hope can reach anywhere." Years later, the story of the princess and the human became legend. Across star systems, parents told their children of the human who faced impossible trials and won the heart of a princess. They spoke of courage, honesty, and the power of seeing the heart of another being. Some claimed that the Velnar Empire grew stronger for having embraced humanity. Others said it was the love between Lariah and Elias that changed the course of countless worlds. The princess and the human were rarely seen in public, preferring quiet corners of the galaxy, where no titles or politics existed. Some said they lived on a moon with forests that glowed faintly under twin moons, where rivers reflected the stars like liquid silver. There they built a home filled with laughter, love, and the quiet certainty that they had chosen rightly. And sometimes travelers passing that small, hidden moon would swear they saw two lights moving across the sky. One golden, one silver, crossing the heavens hand in hand. A symbol, perhaps, that even in a vast, indifferent galaxy, courage, love, and truth could shine brighter than the strongest empire. The Velnar princess had been shunned by all alien suitors. The galaxy had doubted a simple human, and yet, in the end, it was a human's heart that taught a princess the true meaning of courage, hope, and love. And in doing so, humanity, small and overlooked, became legendary. The stars remembered, the empire remembered, and above all, Princess Lariah and Elias Ward remembered, a reminder that love, sincerity, and courage are the greatest power in any galaxy.